Good rotary cutting needs to be learned in the same way as many things need to be learned, and I think that there are some tips that I can give you to help you make the best job with your rotary cutting. There are many types, many sizes, many brands, many different rotary cutters available. I do think it is kind of personal preference, but I'm going to explain to you what I like and why I like it. So in terms of size, this is 18mm, the small one, 28mm, 45mm and 60mm, so a big range, and I do think the one that you choose depends on the type of work that you're doing. So if you make modern quilts that have big pieces, this is probably the rotary cutter for you, but if you do smaller quilts, then perhaps a smaller one is what you would prefer to use. I personally don't like the really tiny one. I find it a bit flimsy, so I tend to choose between the 28mm and the 45mm. And I like a rotary cutter with a simple handle, not any extra bits on it, because the rotary cutter is designed to sit in the palm of your hand as an extension of your arm. So this particular one should sit in the palm of my hand, and there's a ridged bit on the top here, and that is how you hold it, and you can see that that is an extension of my arm, and when I'm cutting I'm not putting any funny angle or pressure on my wrist, and the work is going to be accurately cut because I'm kind of stopping the rotary cutter from slipping up my arm by holding it like so. So if you're holding it in any other way, I would suggest to you that that probably is not the best way. So the choice is yours, and you may spend a little bit of money on a rotary cutter and find it's not the one for you, but that's part of the process. And I do think a cheap rotary cutter often isn't up to the job, really. And when I'm teaching in a classroom situation, I'll see all kinds of different rotary cutters, and what happens most often with the cheaper brands is that they simply do not kind of roll. The blade does not roll nice and smoothly actually in its housing. It can be stiff, it can be slightly elliptical, all kinds of things, and it makes it very hard work to cut. So explore rotary cutters in shops and online before you buy and see what you think, but these standard kind of what I call the ordinary Alpha rotary cutter are my go-to style. Now, a rotary cutter blade will not last forever, and we all tend to keep them longer than we should, really, because they're expensive. So try not to do that. I mean, I know when I've been using a rotary cutter for quite a long time and I put a new one in, I've got so used to pressing down hard with my rotary cutter to get it to cut through the fabric that I feel like I'm almost cutting my mat in half because the new blade is so sharp. But you will need to change it at intervals, and sometimes they do get damaged. You know, if you've left a stray pin on your cutting mat and you've gone over it, you will nick a little nibble out of the blade, and then it won't cut a thread at every rotation. So it's important to work tidily, and that is also important to close the actual rotary cutter up after each cut. And I can't tell you how many times in a class situation that I'm going round and there are all these people working away and they've just left the blade like that, and I cannot stop myself picking it. I warned them at the beginning of the class, if your blade is open, I will be coming along and closing it. Protect yourself, protect the blade. It's not going to get nicked if it is safely and securely closed up. Okay, now when you are changing the blade, you need to unscrew and remove various components. I'm not going to do that, but all I'm going to say to you is that when you do that, be very careful with it, but lay each section out in the order in which you take it apart. Take a photo on your phone if you feel you're not going to remember, to make sure that you assemble it back in the way that it is supposed to be assembled. And you will find that when you come to change your blade for the first time and you're unscrewing everything, they'll be quite linty and maybe a little bit dirty. So take the opportunity to clean everything, because the more lint that gets kind of trapped inside those various pieces, the less easily it is going to roll. Okay, so that is a little word on actually choosing rotary cutters and changing blades. But I want to just chat to you a little bit about mats and rulers, and then explain how you actually go about the process to get the best results. So like rotary cutters, cutting mats also vary quite considerably in their price, in their size, and also in the quality of the materials that are used. You can buy them in all kinds of sizes. This great big one is an A0. It is by a company called Ansio, ANSIO. I bought it on Amazon, and it's very good. There are great companies and there are less good cutting mats, and some of them don't heal. They're supposed to be self-healing, so when you cut, they kind of closes up. Some of them don't do that very well, and some of them are too hard and too shiny, and your ruler and your fabric slide on them and they don't kind of grip the work. So buying a cheap cutting mat isn't really saving you anything, because it's going to be frustrating and you're going to be not doing the most accurate cuts that you might. So get a good quality mat, and like rotary cutting blades, know that it won't last forever. It will eventually get scored, it will become damaged, particularly if you tend to cut in a certain area all the time, and so you will have to at intervals buy a new cutting mat. Okay. And rulers, like rotary cutters and mats, there are many types, many brands on the market, and you need to research to see what you prefer. I like OmniGrid and OmniGrip. I find them very easy to read. There are many different shapes and sizes, so I can always find what I need for the particular job that I'm doing. I can't really advise you on that. You're going to have to research it. But you do need to use specific, specially designed quilting rulers when you are using your rotary cutter to cut your fabric, because they are 1/8 of an inch thick for a reason. That thickness is required so that you can guide the blade against them like so. Okay, so you need that and not a regular ruler. Now, wherever possible, you need to stand to do your rotary cutting, because you can put a little bit more pressure on the work and hold the fabric firmly so that it doesn't slip as you are cutting. Okay, and so it may be that your kitchen work surface or another table in your house is of the right height for you, because you don't want to be too low and you don't want to be too high. And I'm not going to go into huge detail about rotary cutting, because you can find that in our Quilters Question Time beginner class and also in our precision piecing class. But all I'm going to say to you is, when you are cutting, open up the blade as you are ready to cut. Make sure you're holding everything securely. Make sure that you are clamping the ruler really firmly down. You are stood to do this, and that you are cutting so that the blade is at right angles to the ruler. You should not be coming any way angled like so. Okay, always like this. So there are some little tips there to help you with your rotary cutting, and as I say, if you would like more information on that, you can find that in the 2 classes that I've just mentioned. But it's worth just doing a little bit of research, seeing what's available, think about the type of work that you do, the size of the pieces that you are cutting, spend a little bit of money to get good quality equipment, and you will have successful rotary cutting, and that will lead to successful and enjoyable sewing, which is what we all want. If you've enjoyed that information and found it interesting, I teach a huge range of quilting classes through quiltersquestiontime.com, starting with a beginner quilters class that takes you through the entire process from start to finish. and Series 1 Quilters Question Time, the transformational series designed to transform your quilting and take your enjoyment and the results that you make to the next level. quiltersquestiontime.com.